okay, he's clear. I stand up, draw back, send that first arrow, and I watch the arrow go about 6-8 inches right over his back. And when that happened, my mind just went to mush.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, powered by Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, episode number 212. The Keefer Brothers. Rusted Rooster, Dropped, Hatched, and Clinically Dead. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, the Horny Buck Seed Company, Covert Scouting Cameras, and Morse's Sporting Goods. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey, this is Bruce Mitchell, the Alligator Man. You listen to my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hi, my name is Joe Donito. I'm one of the Adirondack trackers at adktrackers.com. You're about to listen to my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry.
This is John Eberhardt. I've been hunting out of the saddle since 1981. I'm about to listen to my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry, Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and fellow carnivores and predators. My name is Jay, and for Jim Keller and Dusty Phillips, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. As you may know, if you have tuned in before, we strive to bring you some of the best hunting content that the world has to offer by interviewing world-class deer hunters and digging into their bag of tricks so that you can do it too. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. The harness program is underway, and we need a little help. We have a couple of harnesses. We also have many that have been requested. The problem is we don't have the budget to mail all these out, so I need your help. If you don't have a harness, but you have a couple extra bucks, these things cost between $9 and $11 to mail. And we set up a PayPal account where you can actually donate money so that if you don't have a harness or you don't need a harness, but you'd like to help the program, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/harness, and you can donate to that cause. We did receive a couple of donations this week. Thank you very much for donating to this important cause where we put harnesses in the hands of the hunters that need them because they don't have them, and those hunters that have extra donate, and then we do the exchange and get them out to them. Also, if you're an iTunes user, we need some reviews. So if you have an iPhone, please go and review this show. I don't care if it's a 5-star or 1-star. I'd like to hear them all. And it helps us understand what people are listening to and if they like it or don't like it, so we can continue to improve this show for you. And if you do like this show and you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. Because if you subscribe, it helps our rankings, and you'll get a notification every single week. This show comes out every Saturday at 5 a.m. that a new show is available, and you'll be notified that you can listen to it right then and there. This week's guest is the Keefer brothers, Chris and Casey. We asked which came first, the rooster or the hatch. Turns out they were both created around the same time. Chris and Casey Keefer, the host of Dropped, an outdoor channel show reminiscent of what might happen if you crossed The Amazing Race and deer hunting into one survivalist package, are behind all of those. Rusted Rooster, a production company, Hatch, a marketing company, and Dropped, a creative outdoor hunting television show. With the help of Jason Brown, Chris and Casey have created what is arguably one of the best concepts on hunting television. We discuss with Chris and Casey how they developed the concept for the show, how the highs and lows of hunting is a microcosm of real life, Chris's deathly car crash experience, and wait until you hear what Casey has for breakfast in the 10 rapid-fire questions at the end of the show. Before we turn to the interview with Chris and Casey Keefer, let's turn to Jim Keller with the Deer News.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story this week, 10 national wildlife refuges could see expanded hunting opportunities. This story was originally featured on the deerhunting.com website and was reported by Alan Clemens. In his latest effort to increase access to hunting and fishing on public lands and waters, U.S. Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke announced a proposal to open or expand opportunities at 10 national wildlife refuges. If finalized, this would bring the number of refuges where the public may hunt up to 373 and up to 312 where fishing would be permitted. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service manages hunting and fishing programs to ensure sustainable wildlife populations while also offering other traditional wildlife-dependent recreation on public lands, such as wildlife watching and photography. The unparalleled network of 566 national wildlife refuges and 36 wetland management districts means that there is a national wildlife refuge within an hour's drive of most major metropolitan areas. Hunting, fishing, and other outdoor activities contributed more than $144.7 billion in economic activity across the United States, according to the USFWS National Survey of Fishing, Hunting, and Wildlife Associated Recreation, which is published every 5 years. More than 90 million Americans, or 41% of the United States population 16 and older, pursue wildlife-related recreation. The USFWS is seeking comments from the public for 30 days regarding information pertaining to the proposed rule. For additional information, including a list of the areas being opened, go to www.regulations.gov, docket number FWS-HQ-NWRS-2017-0005. The proposed rule was published in the Federal Register on August 10, 2017. Comments must be received by September 8, 2017. More than 50 million Americans visit refuges every year. National wildlife refuges provide vital habitat for thousands of species and access to world-class recreation from fishing, hunting, and boating to nature watching, photography, and environmental education. In doing so, they support regional economies to the tune of $2.4 billion per year and support more than 35,000 jobs. White Deer Tours, $300,000 visitors center going up at former Seneca Army Depot. This story was originally featured on the Upstate New York website and was reported by David Figura. Construction work has started on a new $300,000 Seneca White Deer Visitor Center at the former Seneca Army Depot. The center will serve as a home base for Seneca's White Deer's fall bus tour of the conservation area at the former depot. Highlights of the tours will be glimpses of the unique white deer herd within the depot's fences, along with the depot's military history when it was active from 1941 to 2000. Reportedly, nuclear weapons were stored there. Seneca White Deer Incorporated is working closely with Deerhaven Park, LLC, headed by Fayette businessman Earl Martin, to build the center. A fundraiser is currently underway with donations being accepted. Martin, who purchased 7,200 acres of the former depot in 2016 for $900,000, made protecting and preserving the white deer herd a key part of his business plan. He has taken steps to preserve the herd, currently estimated at more than 80 animals, by setting up food plots and getting rid of coyotes as they prey on young deer. Martin created Deerhaven Park, LLC, to manage a part of the depot to preserve the white deer as well as other wildlife. Martin said as the tour business grows, his group is prepared to enlarge the visitor center to better handle the need for visitors. He added his group hopes to incorporate as much green technology as possible into the facility, including electric buses and solar-generated power, according to the Finger Lakes Times. Credit card donations for the center can be made through the website senecawhitedeer.org. Chronic wasting disease still a threat in New York despite few cases. This story was originally featured on the WSKG website and was reported by Sarah Gager. At the Cornell University Diagnostic Lab, a brain sample is taken from the corpse of a deer. This is where deer are tested for chronic wasting disease, or CWD. The deer was acting dazed, walking in circles in a resident's backyard. It eventually got scared, ran into a fence, and died. It may have been dazed after being hit by a car, but in case of disease, a sample needs to be taken. CWD is a highly contagious disease that can have devastating impact on the wild and captive deer populations. New York State is safe, so far. It released a report earlier this year saying the state is another year clear of the disease. After deer tested positive for CWD in 2005, the state revised their surveillance program to be more proactive. Last year, they collected about 2,500 samples from different deer. The tests alone cost around $60,000, but it cost the state over $1 million to control that one case in 2005. 21 states have reported cases of CWD in their wild herds. New York hopes to stay out in front of it. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller with the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Chris and Casey Keefer. Chris and Casey Keefer, welcome to the Big Buck Registries Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friends?
Doing well. Looking forward to it. Happy to be here.
Guys, we've been eager to talk to you for some time, and we had last spoke at SHOT Show, and I pinned you in the corner. I said, all right, you got to come on my show, and you said, okay.
We're hard to nail down, man. Usually we're out in the middle of nowhere tooling around with no phone service and no anything, so we're pretty hard to pin down. We don't get back to civilization much. That's exactly what the issue is. You guys are very, very rarely plugged in to the point where you can sit down and do a show of some sort. So I'm deeply appreciative that you are joining us on the show. It's very, very nice to have you guys.
Absolutely.
So guys, let's talk about you. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
So right now, Chris and I live in Michigan, but where we started was way back in the hills of western Pennsylvania. We grew up right outside of Pittsburgh and about 20 miles from the city in a town called Fox Chapel. We grew up there, and basically Pennsylvania is a lot like Michigan in a lot of ways. I mean, hunting is much more than just a sport there. Hunting's a lifestyle. So, if you're born in Western PA, much like a lot of parts of Michigan, you kind of get indoctrinated into the hunting and fishing and outdoor lifestyle at a pretty early age. So that's pretty much where we got our start.
That's like part of the culture.
Yeah, it is part of the culture. I mean, the entire state of Pennsylvania on that side, the western side, I mean, as a kid, that's all we did, play sport and hunt. That was pretty much ingrained in us from a very young age.
Casey, did you have anybody that more or less showed you the ropes, or was it you just ended up in the woods anyway and you figured it out as you went?
Oh yeah, we definitely had people showing us the ropes. For Chris and I, we're blessed that our dad is a big time hunter. Chuck, actually a lot of people that have watched Rival Wild may catch him on an episode or two there trying to knock down big whitetails. So our dad has always been a big avid hunter, and the same with our grandfather. So our grandfather on our dad's side was also a huge hunter. So pretty much every weekend where we weren't out on the ice playing hockey growing up, we were basically in the woods, whether it was when we were super young, just walking around watching the beagles run bunnies for those guys, or out pheasant hunting, or doing something along those lines. We were in the woods all the time. And come trout season, we had trout camp up in Oil City and up in Tionesta and some of those areas of Pennsylvania. And it was always a family thing for us. It was always Chris, myself, our other brother Cody, when he eventually got old enough, dad, grandpa, cousins, all that kind of thing. So it was always kind of a family atmosphere in the outdoors, which is, to us, part of what it's all about.
Gotcha. So it's ingrained in your souls in a lot of ways, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Chris, do you remember the first gun you ever shot?
Yeah, I do. Obviously, I think a lot of young kids start out with that BB gun, and I can remember back to when Casey was talking about chasing those rabbits. Our grandfather was a big rabbit hunter and bred beagles for basically our childhood. We had litters of beagles running around all the time, and I think going out with him, he had an old shotgun that I think to this day Casey still has it.
Yep.
Nice.
That's one of the first guns I've ever shot. It was I think it was an Ithaca, Casey. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got the old Ithaca and then that Winchester Model 12 nickel steel.
Yeah, the Winchester Model 12 was the first one that I shot, and that was at a rabbit. So I had the BB gun that I learned on little birds every now and then, but when I got to the rabbit, that was like the first time. And I remember my grandfather posted me up on a little crossroads up at an old coal mine and said, "You stay here, and certainly the rabbit's going to run by at some point." And I missed by a good 10 feet, but it was it was a great. Like right then and there, I was like totally addicted. I was like, "Oh wow, this is something that I could do forever." And it was pretty exciting.
That's awesome. Very cool. Casey, what was your first gun? Same gun?
Yeah, same gun. Surprisingly enough, it started with that old nickel steel Winchester Model 12, and like Chris said, I still have that gun to this day, and it's that gun will never get sold. That gun will get passed down from generation to generation. That's one of those things you just can't move. But, we moved quickly thereafter, when it was time for us to actually start hunting. We moved right into shotguns of our own. I'll never forget our dad bought us 2 shotguns. Basically, the same gun. They were Winchester Youth Model 1200 pumps. And those guns were pretty much identical, except Chris's gun was a little bit darker than mine, and I still have that first shotgun. And Chris, I'm pretty sure you still got yours too.
Yeah, I still got it.
Well, that's fantastic. What age were you when you started carrying your own gun that you had individually for yourselves?
I think I was 12. I was 11 when I started carrying my own gun in Pennsylvania. I remember taking my hunting state pistol course back in the day, and, graduating and like feeling like, I had just graduated high school. I was so proud. I had like this giant, in Pennsylvania, they have those huge licenses that go in the back, and I was, I can remember like getting mine and walking around like it was a graduation certificate, for days on end, like, look what I got. So, yeah, I was pretty young, but I that's when you could start hunting back then. And
right.
I was full blown, back then they just set down a stump and say, I'll be back in a couple hours. That was kind of how I learned how to deer hunt. Was sit here and this is what's going to happen. And my dad would explain absolutely everything to a D as to what he thought was going to go down. And then at dark, he'd walk by and say, well, what you got? And I shot one or I didn't. And it was definitely trial by fire, but it was certainly fun.
I mean, it's a big deal to get a gun from a parent, isn't it? It's like a rite of crossing. It's an event. It's a big deal.
It really is. And I think, for us, those are some of the fondest memories of actually, Dad coming home. And I can remember, and there's 4 years in age difference between Chris and I. And I can still remember the day, though, when he came home with those shotguns and it was like, all right, boys, here you go. It's that you're ready to take the next step. You can kind of go out on your own and do your own thing and be responsible. And, it takes a lot of guts for a parent to do that. But at the same time, we had good teachers. We had, like I said, our dad and our grandfather both, who put a lot of time and energy and effort into showing us the right way to do things and how to handle ourselves in the woods and everything else. And, if it wasn't for them getting us started off on the right foot, we wouldn't be here doing what we're doing today.
Right. Gotcha. Casey, what does hunting mean to you? What's your philosophy of hunting? What does it mean to you now?
That's an awesome question. I think there's so many different answers that I could go with on a question like that. But when I break it all down and kind of boil it down to its most simple form, hunting to me is about the camaraderie and spending time enjoying the outdoors the way it was meant to be with friends and family. So, when I first started out as a hunter, of course, you want to get that buck or you want to get that doe or whatever you're out there chasing. If you're in the West, maybe it's an elk. If you're up in Alaska, maybe it's a moose. Everybody has that drive and that desire to try to get what they're out there after. And I think, as I've matured a little bit and I kind of made my way through my hunting career, so I guess you could call it, I really turned to just one thing, and that's enjoying the time in the outdoors with friends and family. I mean, for Chris and I, we're lucky enough that as family, we get to spend a lot of time together in the outdoors, whether it's in the whitetail woods hunting our leases all over the place or 30 days in the middle of nowhere for drops. We're always together. And I remember, one time we got split up on a hunt. And it was one of those deals where, he ended up being successful without me being there, and I ended up being successful without him being there. And it was just weird. It was one of those weird, awkward, like, man, I don't have anybody to celebrate this with. I don't have anybody to turn around and, high five and enjoy the moment and share the story with. It's kind of just me out here. So I think for me, that's the most simple thing. It's time in the outdoors the way it was meant to be with friends and family.
Gotcha. Chris, what about you? Same thing?
Yeah, I'd have to say it's the same. I mean, we've, like Casey mentioned, we're in a little different situation. We do get to spend a lot of time together, and it's been an amazing journey. But I think as we grow older and as we get older, I mean, you're always chasing that big buck. There's no doubt. But I think, just the tactics and the things that I love the most, especially about deer hunting in general, is deer camp. For one, the smell of chili and when you don't want the smell of chili, just the guys that are sitting around the campfire. The whole thing about deer camp in general to me is really what I love to do. But I also do love the challenge of a hunt. And I think Casey and I over the years have grown kind of addicted to the tactics, like getting in on a specific deer and really trying to learn about the animal itself. So enjoying, friends and family is first, but also just kind of respecting where we're at and the animals that we're hunting and really trying to kind of play that game, with them, that one-on-one to see, what we can do and what we can come up with. And I think every now and then we kind of have to check ourselves and remember where we're at. Again, we're lucky to go to a lot of places. We go to Alaska, we see Sealand, and when you're there, it's not about the actual kill shot on a hunt for us. It's about that entire journey and that story. And, you're able to come back with those memories. And you talk about those for days. It's funny when you come back from a hunt, at least in our world, we never actually talk about the actual shot on that animal. It's always about what happened on this day, or when we were on top of that mountain, or when you went into that tree stand. And I think it's all those memories that you can create on one outdoor experience, whether it be hunting, fishing, or anything in the outdoors. It's just the memories created, I think, is what makes it so addicting for us.
Gotcha. Now, Chris, I wanted to go to a moment in your life, and you describe it on your website, about a time that you were in an accident, and as you describe, you're clinically dead for a period of time. Can you elaborate on all that?
Yeah. It was 8 years ago. I was coming back from a turkey hunt in Iowa, and my father and I were in the same vehicle. We were driving back, and we were coming east on I-80, and we were coming right into the sun. And I had been driving, and I was messing with the visor and trying to kind of figure out, the sun was just blinding at that point. And I looked up at the last second, and the truck had jackknifed up ahead of us, and traffic was at an absolute dead stop. And there was a car in front of me that had 3 kids in it, and I can remember seeing those kids, and I veered to the right. I swerved, I missed the kids, missed that car, and unfortunately for me, there was a refrigerated truck on the side of the road that was broke down right there, and I hit that truck at about 62 miles an hour.
Wow.
And I was sliding on my side, so I took the brunt on my side, and it completely caved in the vehicle, and fortunately, my father was in the passenger side, and it literally kind of created a shell around him.
Yep.
And he was able to step out of the vehicle, but when he stepped out and came around the other side, I was laying there, the top was sheared off, and I was, pretty much at that point, I wasn't breathing, and I was, from what they tell me, I was gone. And so, by the miracle of God, I was about gone for a couple minutes and then came back, started breathing again and started coughing. And they were like, "Are you kidding me?" And so, long story, the fire trucks got there and cut the roof off and pulled me out, got me to a hospital. And to be honest with you, there's a period of time there that I have no recollection of whatsoever. But I can tell you that I broke my femur and my ankle in 6 places, and my knee, my face, my orbital bone. I've stitches for days. Can't even count how many. Lost my vision in my left eye, and was in really, really bad shape. Took me about 1.5 to 2 years in a wheelchair to a walker to a cane to learn how to walk again on that side. Again, I was my vision came back. I had surgery, and just again, I think it's basically by the grace of God I was able to get my vision back, and and so here I stand today, kind of the motto to our slogan of be alive and just kind of live every day to the fullest. And I've tried to make every day since then count. But I went through a pretty rough period there for a long time, and I think it was for the support of my wife and my mom, dad, and my brother Casey, Cody, and all like our family, everybody, my sister-in-law. I don't think that I'd be standing here today. So it was a pretty unbelievable turn of events that wasn't planned in our lives, but we definitely got over it and overcame.
That's absolutely mind-blowing. It's crazy.
Yeah. I was in a clinical coma, like it put me in on medically induced for a little while. I don't exactly know how long, and then I was airlifted back to Michigan and spent the rest of that year in a hospital bed in my living room.
Wow.
And all while having a 4-month-old baby.
Wow.
So my wife was an angel at that point, pretty much, and all of my family chipped in and helped her, and it was just unbelievable. So yeah, I was kind of that old curmudgeon that was sitting in the bed, really wanting to be outside, and and I was just all fucked up. They said, "Just sit down," and I was like, "Okay." So, but yeah, there's a period there that I don't remember, and I'm sure Casey remembers it. I know we've talked about the day he got the call. It brings back kind of a rush of memories, but yeah, I mean, it was just a bad time in our lives. But I think through faith and through everything, we just stuck to it, and we came out. And so now I'm climbing mountains at 8,000 feet, and we're hammering away. So it's been a pretty amazing journey.
Gotcha. Casey, do you remember the call?
Oh yeah, I remember the call like it was yesterday. It was It was crazy because I remember it so well. That very same day, I had got probably the best news of my life on top of the worst news just hours later. So I had gotten word earlier that day. I ended up, my wife, Lisa, is from Saskatchewan, Canada.
Yep.
And we had met up there, and I was actually trying for about a year and a half to 2 years to get her a full-time visa to be able to get her here to the States for longer than just 6 months.
Gotcha.
And that very day, I got the phone call that morning that Lisa had been approved for her visa and everything went through. She was actually up in Saskatchewan at the time. And, of course, I called her and we talked about it and, kind of celebrated. And we were all excited, a year and a half to 2 years worth of hard work. And she finally gets her visa and she's here in the States and we can be together for good and all that good stuff. And then, that night, the Ottawa Senators were playing the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first round of the playoffs.
Right. Wow.
I had just cracked a beer to watch the Penguin game, and I turned and I looked, and my mom was standing next to me on the deck there at the house, and she had a piece of paper in one hand and a phone in the other, and was shaking uncontrollably. And I was with a buddy of mine, and I said, "You take her, and I'll take the phone." So I grabbed the phone and I grabbed the piece of paper, and all it said was, Sergeant, I don't even remember what his name was, but it just said Sergeant something, Illinois State Police. So I ended up calling that number and I got a hold of him, and he said, your dad and your brother were in a really bad accident. Your dad's fine. Everything seems to be okay with him, but your brother's a different story. We're not sure if he's going to make it.
Wow.
So there was that deal. So I got to go down and be the one that, knocked on the door at Chris's house with his wife, Katie, and his brand new baby, Kylie, and basically give them the information of, hey, I just talked to these people, and he's in the hospital and they're doing the best they can, but I suggest we jump in the truck and take off and head to Illinois. So, that was a pretty tough deal to do, but that's exactly what we did. We buckled up and jumped in the truck and we ripped down there as quickly as we could get there and just settled in for the long haul and for the road to recovery. So the day that happened will live in infamy, I think, in all of our minds. It's one of those deals you never forget how it went down or where you were,
It seems to me that life is like that, where you have incredible highs followed by the yin and yang of incredible lows. And it's like that life tests you. And I think hunting is like a microcosm of that, where you have highs and lows in the deer woods or whatever you're hunting, and it tests you mentally and in many other ways. Yep,
I agree 100%. And when I look back on that time, it's a little bit crazy because Chris and I think at that point we were both coming off careers as big game guides. We both guided kind of all over the world, and we started getting into the TV thing, and really, we were into the infancy of what we were trying to do with a television show. And instead of, just putting a show on the air, we wanted to come out and tell a story, and a unique story, whether it be good or bad, whether we'd be successful or not. We always said we'd stick to the story, and that's what we wanted to try to do. So here we are, relatively young, in the infancy of what we're trying to do, and just really, catching on with some viewers and some sponsors. And now all of a sudden we go through this ordeal to where, Chris is in the hospital and basically immobilized, for a year and a half, going on 2 years, getting his vision back in his eye and, getting the femur healed up and the ability to walk again and everything else. Hunting was kind of the last thing on our minds in terms of for sport. But at that time, we're also doing it for a living. So in order to put food on the table, we had to keep going and we had to keep pushing. So basically, it was a one-man band there for about a year and a half. And I can remember, going on bear hunts, and I'm strapping the camera to the tree stand, trying to film myself because he's not there, and, trying to, pull the weight on that end, all the while he's laid up at home grumpy as hell because he can't be there, so that kind of, just like you said, and hunting really is a microcosm of that. It's those ebbs and flows, and it's the ups and downs that you go through on every single hunt and every single sit. Those sits that you start off enthusiastic, then you don't see anything, and then a deer shows up out of nowhere and you're back up on a high. I mean, life is very much the same, and I think hunting and the way that we approach it, it can teach you an awful lot on how to handle yourself in everyday life if you can handle the ebbs and flows of a good hard hunt.
Right, absolutely. Now, Jim Keller has been listening in, and you guys somehow have a connection, right? Back to, was it college or high school?
Ferris State in Big Rapids, Michigan. So, Casey, did you go there first and play, and then Chris came along behind you?
No, so Chris is actually older than I am. So I was in Saskatchewan when he started there. his freshman year. I was still in high school, and then I went to Saskatchewan. I moved up there to play my junior hockey career before I came down. So Chris was there first.
And did you guys play together then at any point?
One time,
Yep.
I think. Oddly enough, I was a graphic arts major, and had no idea what I was going to do with graphic arts. And, it's kind of funny now today owning a part of a marketing company. and all I do is graphic arts for the outdoor industry. And it's kind of ironic and oddly funny because I've talked to some of my professors from there. They do laugh at me and say, I would have never guessed. And I said, me neither. So it's kind of funny how things come around.
Right. That's crazy. So you actually got to use some of your college degree.
Yeah. I never thought that I would be in the position I'm in today. I never thought that's the career path that would take me, especially getting into television and hunting, and as we grew into that, started our other companies. But yeah, today we do a lot of the branding and stuff for a lot of the major companies in the outdoor industry, which is kind of exciting for us. And so now I get to see that come to kind of all the way around full circle from when I was learning Photoshop many years ago.
Gotcha.
And how to run a printing press, and now of course everything's digital, so it's kind of funny that we have that capability now.
Right, gotcha. Casey, what was your major in college?
So I actually never finished college. I left early, but I did go to school for psychology when I was going.
Okay.
I went there for psychology, and basically, if you ask my parents, I'm sure they'll tell you I was only going to do one of two things for a living. I was either going to play hockey or hunt, because it's the only two things I was ever really any good at.
Gotcha.
Well, I ended up getting lucky, and I got into the hunting world. I started as a guide, basically, like a lot of people in the hunting world. I started out as a big game guide and kind of was in the right place at the right time, and started flirting with some of the TV stuff way back when, and it just happened to catch on, and I got lucky to get involved with it more and more. And like Chris said, now here we sit today with Rusted Rooster Media, our production company, and then Hatch Marketing, which is our marketing company. And, we've got a great team around us, and we're rocking and rolling. So it's been kind of a tiger by the tail for a little while, but it's been a lot of fun.
Gotcha. So which came first, Rusted Rooster dropped or Hatch Marketing?
So Rusted Rooster really came first. Chris, you want to dive in there?
No, go ahead. I was going to say that the time came simultaneously, but yeah, I would have to say that Rooster came first.
Yeah, so Chris and I at the time, we had done a show that was being produced at a production house out of Arkansas. We were doing a show called Backcountry Quest, and it was just he and I kind of sharing our experiences and everything else. But we knew we wanted to do more. We knew we wanted to try to tell an epic story. So we had moved production houses from Hot Springs over to a production house called Jack Pine Productions, which is here in Michigan. That was owned and run by a guy named Jason Brown. And, we'd seen some of Jason's work, and he was literally and still is literally a visionary when it comes to creative storytelling through a lens and a way to bring viewers in and draw people into the story and really get them to invest in more than just a kill shot. So we'd reached out to Jason and teamed up and worked together on Backcountry Quest for a couple of years. I think probably Chris, like 3 seasons, I think, where Jason was editing and doing all that stuff. And we came up with this wild and crazy idea one night. When the three of us first sat down and met, we knew we were aligned in what we were trying to do with bringing these experiences and these stories to people in a much deeper way. So we knew we were aligned there, and eventually we came up with this idea of, hey, we need to go do kind of a do-it-yourself deal up in Alaska. And it started out as, well, okay, we'll film it for Backcountry Quest. And then from there, it turned into, well, if we're going to go to Alaska, we should probably see what all we're able to kill when we're up there. And, well, we can kill moose. Okay, we can kill black bear. Okay, we can kill caribou. Well, boy, we're going to need more than 10 days to try to do all that. So really, at the same time we were going through this, we're talking about forming Rusted Rooster and everything else with the three of us. And so I guess in a way, it was all simultaneous, because we formed Rusted Rooster and then we finished the bottle of whiskey and started Dropped. So
gotcha.
That's where the no food part came in.
Yeah, that's where the 30 days with no food, no provisions or anything, that came at the very end.
Right. So for people who haven't seen your show, which I think is probably unlikely, but for people that are just tuning into this show for the first time or have not been introduced to your television show, could you give us the entire premise of what Dropped is all about?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so basically with Dropped, we're going into our 7th season, I believe, Case. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going into our 7th season right now. We started out on the Sportsman channel, and we've been on the Outdoor channel now for the past 2 seasons. Basically, Casey and I, we get dropped into the middle of the wilderness for 28 days or more, a month, call it a month. And we get dropped in now with 0 provision. So we go in with nothing. We get dropped to a location. We don't know where exactly we're going to get dropped. We know the valley or the river system, but we don't know the exact location. For example, this year we got dropped in New Zealand. And so we got dropped in by helicopter. We land, and whatever is sitting there when we get there is what we're able to use. So they give us cash items along the way. And so we get whatever's there, we're able to use that, and we get a GPS coordinate in another time frame. And so they may say you've got 3 days, and this is X amount of miles, and you can get to there. And when we get there, there's another cache. If we don't get there, then they pull the cache. So if we don't make it in time, we don't get the equipment, and we just kind of earn our way through and hunt extremely hard way, and just kind of live off the land. So we go in with no food, no provisions whatsoever, and just live off the land. It's whatever we could kill, catch, or pick is pretty much our diet for the month, and we just go in for an epic adventure, and we try to tell the story through the lens. We try to be extremely cinematic to really paint the picture. And, there's nothing new of people going into Alaska and doing big hunts. That's pretty standard nowadays in outdoor television. But what we wanted to show was actually what happens day to day when you're out there for that long. And we just decided to challenge ourselves and say, I think we can live off the land for that period of time. And it kind of took on a beast of its own. When we launched our first season, it was in the Brooks Range of Alaska. I think to this day was probably Casey and I's favorite season. And I don't know if it's just a wonderment of what that first season presented, but it was an amazing time, and it was kind of what we considered groundbreaking at the time for outdoor television. We loved that. And then we've been just riding it all the way through, and just trying to come up with new, innovative ways to tell that story. So it's been pretty fun. And this next one that's coming out in September, dropped to Expedition South Pacific. It was the first time that we've left Alaska. So we've been in Alaska for 6 years on all different rivers, and it was unbelievable to be able to change location, kind of put us in a different environment and challenge. Was just so much fun.
That's awesome. Chris, we met at an ATA show, I'd say, 3 years ago or so, and you had described that exact premise to me as we were standing there at the lacrosse booth enjoying a carbonated adult beverage. And, and it blew my mind. Like, this is like Amazing Race meets the outdoor world, only without all the modern delicacies that the Amazing Race gets to deal with. So it was rough, it was hard, but you got a couple of the things that you needed in as you went along. I said, that's a fantastic concept, and it blew my mind once I heard it.
Well, I think I appreciate that. I remember that conversation as much as I remember those carbonated beverages as well.
Right.
But I think one of the things that Casey and I think what really set us off in the beginning and why it started to grow was survival shows were really taking off mainstream television at the time.
Right.
And as we were watching them as producers, and having been big game guides and literally spent so much time out there already, that was nothing new for us to spend 28 days in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
It was just a matter of documenting it the right way. But what we wanted to do is actually make it a month long and make it so that we're nomadic in the fact that we have to move. A lot of those shows that are out there today that are in the mainstream world, they're a little bit different in the fact that they have to stay there. And, in a survival situation, you wouldn't just stay there and hope food comes to you to go find it. So Casey and I kind of wanted to be nomadic in the fact that we could move and do 110 miles on a river or do 86 miles through a mountain or just go from point A to point B and really kind of earn our way through. And we've never claimed to be survivalists at all. We're not. But what we always tell people is that we're bush savvy. In the fact that, we probably aren't going to take a car muffler and make a carbonated, water treatment plant out of it. But what we would do is, given the scenario and what we have in front of us, we're going to figure out the best way to use it and just become bush savvy and just kind of say, you know what, let's do this. And it works for us in that period of time. And so that's what we started to do. And as we documented that, and we really kind of learned more and more as we went, the first year we did it, we took all the gear, and we just didn't take food. So we had all the modern stuff. We had a tent, we had everything, and we were like, wow. And as we went on, we challenged ourselves, and we got less and less and less. So now, as we get dropped in, literally with the clothes on our back, and that's kind of what excites us now, is what that adventure is going to bring. Like, we have no idea what's ahead of us. We don't know what we're even going to get for equipment. We just basically put on those clothes, look at each other, and say, let's go. And then a month later, we're sitting there waiting for that plane or that helicopter, and we're like, what an unbelievable journey. So, yeah, it has a totally different spin on the outdoor side of television. To be able to mix hunting in there for that hunting audience has just been awesome.
Yeah. So it's so dang creative and innovative. I love the way you guys think. It's awesome. Very cool. So
thanks.
You mentioned cinematography, and I can't help but I look at some of your work, and I'm sucked right into the screen. It's crazy how good it is. Where did you develop those skills? I mean, hunting skills is one thing, but throwing a camera in the mix, that's a whole different set of skills. Did that come from you, Chris, as a artist?
No, that came in the relationship with Jason Brown, our partner, partner. When we created Rooster, he actually said one time when we formed the company, he looked at us and said, "You two do what you do best in front of the camera, and I'll take care of the rest." As far as behind the camera and the edits and how the shows are put together, and that's really how it got started. Was it was Jason's visionary as far as how this was going to be filmed. Casey and I obviously were involved in kind of the creative process, and I can still remember the day that we finished the first episode of Drop. Jason was in an edit bay. Casey and I were there. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. We were just working and just dogging it out, trying to create something. And we watched the intro to the first season, and there's a plane that flies overhead when they drop us off. And it was kind of the one they used for promotion, and it's kind of like an infamous shot of Drop over the years. And we watched it, and there just something wasn't right. And we changed the music. And I can remember Casey and I and Jason sitting around talking about it. We looked it up. We found this music library. We changed the music to lyrical music, and he made a couple of changes on the shots, and we watched it. And the three of us, not a word of a lie, I think 3 of us cried as far as, like, we had an emotional moment right there. We were like, if we can have an emotional moment and that's us on screen, I think we could probably do this the right way. And we all kind of said, like, high five. And Jason said from that point, he said, I got this on this season. And he literally, that was how that came about. And since then, we've had some amazing cinematographers that are with us now. Some guys that have really, changed the game as far as the way it's shot now. I mean, we've got some experienced guys that, one of our gentlemen in Panama, we call him Patrick Feigl. He's been on Deadliest Catch and Whale Wars and many other stuff. So now we're able to kind of bring in the guys that really are fishing areas that know what they're doing. And it just is up their game since we've been so spread out over a couple of years. So we've had the same guys with us.
Gotcha. Absolutely phenomenal work, guys. It's unbelievable work. So
Thank you.
Let's talk about some of your hunting tactics and techniques that you've developed over the years relative to your big game guiding and to just being dropped in the middle of nowhere and having to live off the land kind of stuff. And specific to deer hunting, are there techniques and strategies that you have found to be useful no matter where you go?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so Chris and I, we have this discussion a lot amongst ourselves, and we get questions like this pretty regularly. And one of the things that we do over the last little while is especially on Rival Wild, our whitetail shows, we've tried to kind of share that process with people through the show. So what we've basically done is kind of broken it down and developed a scenario where we have what we call our kill factors. And that's things that we take into account on any given hunt that are going to lead us to a measurable level of, are we going to be successful or are we not? Okay. So with those kill factors, you start taking into account like the timing of the year, the weather, the wind direction, intel on a specific animal or not. We've got a couple of these different things that we break down. But I think, the one that's important for me, the tactic, I guess, you would call it, that's important for me in terms of whitetail that I think works just about anywhere that I hunt is patience. I mean, if there's one thing that I can sum up the way that I hunt, it's patient. I'm the kind of hunter where I will sit back And I don't go into a buck's area until I am 100% confident that I'm going to get an arrow in that deer. I'll sit back and sit on the fringe, and I'm content with glassing from a distance, observing what's going on, seeing what the deer are doing, trying to pinpoint a single deer down to a single spot to where I know with some level of certainty he is going to show up in this spot at this time with this wind under these conditions, and I'm going to be able to get an arrow in them. And that, for me, that's proven successful, across multiple states in terms of whitetail, all with, really big, old, mature whitetails. So for me, I would say the tactic I use is patience.
Gotcha. What about you, Chris?
It's funny. Casey and I, we have two completely different hunt tactics when it comes to whitetail, and I think it plays off great. My hunt tactics, I respect the patience because it takes the right person to have that type of patience, and I think it's an unbelievable tactic. And as a matter of fact, it's probably worked more than mine because he's got a lot more bigger deer than I do, so maybe I ought to start listening to him a lot more. But for me, I'm in. I like to get involved, so I like to get kind of in deep right away, and I like to see what they're doing. So I want to know what kind of calls are happening, what they're working, is it grunting, is it rattling? So I actually go in and try to get as close as I possibly can. But I really, really, for me, and a kill factor is intel. Trail cameras, modern technology, things that are out there today that can help you get in. And you have to remember that Casey and I are in a little different situation in the fact that we're kind of managing our properties. We're fortunate to have kind of some big leases that we manage, and that we're looking for a specific deer a lot of the time. So we're going in trying to hunt one, maybe two specific bucks on our property, and so I think having the patience to pass is what grows big bucks. He'll never grow any bigger if you shoot him, and so a lot of times that's difficult because so many factors play into that. And I think it just depends on what state and how much land you have, and all that. And so the other thing is that intel, just being able to gather as much information. And so for me, I like to get in there to see can I see him? Where is he traveling? What's he doing? What's the trail cameras telling me? Where am I picking him up on camera at what times, and trying to match up all that stuff so that I can get in there and figure, okay, we're both getting intel and we both like to get involved, and Casey likes to stay back and kind of work the fringes, and I like to just get right up in there and see what these deer are doing. So it actually plays out well because we can get back to camp and he can say, I saw this talk out in this field tonight, and I can say, in there was this action, and we kind of are able to play off each other and see and end up with the best results.
Gotcha. Very cool. So being dropped in multiple locations, how many different species of deer have you hunted? Let's go with Casey.
Oh, geez. So for whitetail, I've hunted whitetail all over the U.S. through the Midwest, but then I've never hunted elk, surprisingly enough. I have hunted mule deer. I was fortunate enough to go on an absolute killer mule deer hunt last year in Alberta, and that was pretty successful. I ended up taking a deer we called the Majestic Lion after, I don't know. I think, everybody loves the name. We come up with some creative names.
That's excellent.
It's so much easier than saying, the Big Ten with the kicker off his left G2 and the drop on his beam. I mean, just give the deer a name.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I killed the Majestic Lion in Alberta. He went 208. So, I've hunted mule deer, I've hunted whitetail, moose. Obviously, we've taken moose, caribou. But really, that's about it. I've never traveled out of North America aside from the South Pacific to hunt. Down there, I've killed Sika deer. I've killed Himalayan tahr. Never did kill a red deer when I was down there or anything like that. So really, North America is kind of my bread and butter.
Okay. So Casey, if you're being dropped in the middle of nowhere and for 30 days, you must stink pretty good by the end. So how do you deal with like scent control and all the things that we talk about almost daily when you have access to a shower like that?
So you stink an awful lot is like the most severe understatement.
Yeah, it is.
It's bad. So you got to remember, you get my brother and myself, and then two camera guys, because that's all we take out there with us. Our production crew is only two guys.
Right.
So the four of us, locked up in a tiny little tent when we're fortunate enough to get a tent is pretty rough. But yeah, scent control is a huge thing. So, when we're in Alaska, obviously there's times where, we've braved it and, you just gear right down and jump in the river and try to get a quick rinse off, at least if it's with water. Other times we've been able to, heat up a little pot on the fire to at least try to, rinse your hair, rinse your face. But at the end of the day, you smell an awful lot like campfire smoke too when you're up there.
Right.
We burn a lot of fires in Alaska, and believe it or not, that used to be a pretty big hunting technique. And I know there's still people out there that do it. They literally smoke their clothes out. So, the scent of a campfire can be so overpowering and overwhelming for an animal that they have a hard time detecting, other odors in there. But that's something that we don't like to rely on. Basically, my whole thing, and I know Chris is much the same, is nothing can ever replace hunting the wind. There's a lot of really good scent control products out there. Scent Lock makes a great piece of clothing. They've got an effective technology that Chris and I were fortunate enough to use for a long time. But nothing replaces the wind. I mean, that's just the way that I always look at it, is nothing is a surefire thing to fool a deer's nose or any animal's nose for that matter. So playing the wind is the number one most important thing. And I think that goes into our decisions wherever we hunt, whether it's a tree stand in the Midwest or some mountain range up in the Brooks in Alaska or New Zealand, wherever it may be, wind is always number one. If the wind's not right, then generally speaking, we're not going to even try it.
Right. Gotcha.
So, it's actually kind of interesting. So this year on Rival Wild, we did something a little bit different. The fact that a lot of people have issues with they get a lease, but they don't have anywhere to stay, like a hotel where they can't find a house. So
right.
We decided to set up a hunt camp, and we set hunt camp there, and we actually took one tent. We were using the big Cabela's, the Lactac tent, and we set one off to the side, and that was our silk-free tent, and inside that tent we had ozonic unit with
right.
the bag. And so that was like a great technique for us to be able to just take our clothes, put in those bags, seal up that tent. That way that campfire smoke, the griddle, all that stuff kind of stayed out. And of course we had a little outside shower that we were able to kind of silk down and do that with. But as far as washing your clothes over and over again, we could just dump it in and nail it with ozonics, and then we were good to go after that. So different techniques for different places. And whitetail, there was that technique. If we go the other way, it's different. So it's definitely that was an interesting thing this year, and it worked out really, really well.
Very cool. Because you hear about these guys that are so fanatical about scent control to the point where they don't even hunt the wind because they think they've got it contained so much, and they probably do. But I think you got to have access to all the right cleaning equipment, and you have to wash your clothes and take showers, and that doesn't necessarily happen if you're out in the middle of nowhere for 30 days. So I can see where you have to rely on other things, but having an ozonics machine in your camp must be a huge advantage. And the smoke technique, and of course, hunt the wind is always the big one if you have to, or if you don't have access to all the other things.
Yep. Yeah. And I'll give you an example just really quickly on the whitetail thing. So when, having the ozonics is critical for us because, if you hunt the wind the right way, you hunt the stand the right way, and you do your due diligence and keeping your scent down with a product like ozonics, you can get away with, hunting one particular stand. And there's a deer that I took a couple of years ago. We called him Megatron, and he was a pretty impressive deer. He's a 183-inch mainframe 8-point. He was a beast, and I hunted that deer 18 days in a row from the exact same tree stand and never busted a single deer. So, there's a lot of guys that, that I hear, hey, I'll only hunt that stand 1 or 2 days. And, that certainly is the case for a lot of stands. But every once in a while you have that area where the deer come from a certain direction. And as long as the wind is right, you're doing your due diligence for scent control, you can stick it out and ride it out. And I ended up killing that deer, after 18 days of hunting them daylight to dark every single day. So,
gotcha.
There's, like you said, there's different techniques that you can use, and having, products available to us now that really change the game in terms of scent control are definitely beneficial.
Gotcha. All right. Chris, when it comes to different gear, we talked about ozonics a little bit. What other gear do you rely on when you go on a whitetail hunt or a muley hunt? And some of these terrains that you're hunting vary tremendously. It seems like you're going to need different boots for different situations. You're going to need to stock in certain areas. You said you like to get deep into the habitat fairly quickly. What type of gear are you using, and what kind of weapons are you hunting with? Are you mostly bow or mostly gun, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah, we're Casey and I are a little bit of both. So I'd say the number one gear for us has got to be bolding. The clothing that Casey and I wear is Cabela's Instinct. It's a new line of clothing that we were fortunate enough to kind of help put our 2 cents in on a lot of things. Cabela's is an amazing company and allowed us to kind of say, hey, this is what we think, and we were able to kind of help that along and as far as some design pieces. And they've done some amazing stuff. And so from our standpoint, really what we do is layer when it comes to clothing. And so there's a lot of different pieces for different things. So for stocking, we can layer down, layer up, depending on, it's not bulky. Then, of course, we have the new camouflage that Cabela's came out with. It's called O2 Octane. And the nice thing about that is it's not specific to the whitetail wood.
Okay.
So it's more of a digital camo that can be used in Alaska, in New Zealand, and also be used in the tree in Kansas. So that's a really good setup between our clothing and our camouflage, and just being able to go out there. If we're going out for 30 days, we don't change clothes because we don't have other clothes. And so if you don't have a jacket or a pair of pants that's going to kind of make it through everything, you don't want to be out there with a big tear in your pants and, a jacket that you're getting soaking wet in. So clothing is a major thing for us. When it comes to the weapon, we hunt with both. We've got PSE is who we use for bows, and we've just been. I mean, they're just an amazing company. We've been with them for a very long time and love everything they do. And we've also got kind of a bow with them that we have in Cabela's. It's kind of a own branded bow, and so we've really worked with PSE, and they just do amazing stuff over there with their new cam system. From speed to comfort to everything. I mean, I shoot the Carbon Air right now, and I just love that bow. So when it comes to bows, PSD is our choice. And then there's another little thing that Casey and I do. We have it's part of a digital series that's out there right now called Winchester Life. And it's Casey and myself, and Hickey Boxler, and a great female from New York, and then a couple of guys, Paul Sawyer, guys from the Whitetail Property crew. And we get to go rifle hunting, and we get to go shoot shotguns. We get to go do 3-gun competitions. So we get our fix of gun shooting through Winchester Life. And so we definitely do some of those big game hunts throughout the year with a rifle, and definitely use different Winchester models as we go. But as we talked about earlier, ever since the very first gun I shot, I was a Winchester guy, and today I'm a Winchester guy. And so I think those 3 things are pretty critical. So between the clothing and the PSE, the Cabela's Instinct PSE, and then of course Winchester, we're pretty well set. And I think Casey and I are we're funny because we get our clothing, we get these suit, and once we have it, we just wear it until it's like gone. I mean, it's like, all I wore it on drop last year, I wore it on drop this year, and I wore it all through whitetail season. It's like I wear the same thing. I can't not wear it, and I just beat it to death. And you got to have something that's gonna hold up, and so that's proven to do that over the last 12 months.
That's pretty cool. So you beat the heck out of your equipment and your, especially your clothing, is shredded by the time you're done.
Yeah. It's actually funny because they'll give us some stuff to test because, just as an example, there's like if you were to buy a piece of equipment, you may go in and out of the tree stand a couple different times throughout maybe a week or in a month or something in a normal situation where we're able to give them 2 years worth of research in a matter of 40 days because we're absolutely just beat it. And there was one piece of equipment that we had, and we took it, and there was a kind of a malfunction with the equipment. And we went back and said, this probably wouldn't happen over the course of even 3 seasons with a normal hunter, but it did happen over the course of 40 days because of the way that we beat it. And they were able to make a change, and they came back, and it's a better product today, and they've never had that issue. So we're able to really speed up the stuff and put it to the test. And if it passes, where we're at, then it's a good piece of equipment. And we've been with our same sponsors for a very long time because we believe in all their products, trust them. And we're not one to kind of flirt and jump around a lot. As a matter of fact, we've really stayed loyal and been with our companies since really the beginning. A lot of them have been with us for 10 to 15 years. So that just goes to show you how good their products are and that we believe in them, and we're able to kind of test and give them information, and a company that's willing to take that information back is always a good company.
Right. Gotcha. I mean, how can you go wrong with Winchester? I mean, it's like you're not American if you never shot a Winchester.
Oh, man. No, there's no doubt. I mean, Winchester just breathes. I mean, we love working with Winchester, and our production house does a lot of the short films. It's very amazing. stuff, like little stories that they tell, and just to be able to tell those stories from our standpoint, they're amazing stories. And we always sit back and watch it and go, we were fortunate enough to tell it. It has nothing to do with Casey and I. Maybe it was the story of the veteran, or there's one called Deer Season that's got, close to 3 million views or something like that. I mean, those stories, we're able to say, those live in infancy with Winchester forever. So, 50, 60, 100 years from now, if someone else is doing all this stuff, and they'll be able to say, hey, have you ever seen these old films? Check this out. And that's a pretty cool thing for us to be part of.
That's awesome. And you got to hunt with Nikki Boxler, you said. She's fantastic. She was a guest on our show in one of our most downloaded shows that we've ever had.
Yeah, Nikki's great. Nikki is she's the all-American girl, isn't she? She can really do it all.
She really is. And she's a serious hunter, too. I mean, it's not all just looks for the camera. I mean, she's hardcore.
Oh, yeah. No, Nikki's great. She's the only female in, I think we had like 5 different guy hosts that she can hold her own in camp. It's fantastic. We like Raz and Nikki and like to have a lot of fun with her, and she's just a great sport, and she's been a fantastic addition to the Winchester team, and I think she does a great job. I mean, she really does love to hunt. I mean, loves to hunt everything, loves to fish. She's still got to take me on a musky fishing trip, but she does like it.
She owes you.
Yep.
That's funny.
What do you guys like for broadheads as far as do you use expandables or using fixed, or does it depend on what you're hunting?
So expandables. So we use Rage broadheads. We've used Rage broadheads for a long time, and I don't see myself switching anytime soon. I think, Rages have always performed well for us. We started out way back with, the first Rage 2 blade, and then went to the Rage Titaniums when they had the Titaniums, and then from there went to the Rage Extremes, and then from the Extremes went to the Hypodermic, which actually was kind of cool because we had our hand in actually helping design and brand and bring that whole product to market. So we were super happy with that, and of course now it's on to the Rage Trypan. So I think those guys, when they say leading the evolution of lethal technology, that's exactly what they're doing. Those guys know what they're doing when it comes to building broadheads and lethal broadheads, and they continue to improve upon it, whether it's, the stainless steel ferrule or dropping in, the new shock collar design as of, 2-3 years ago that got rid of the old rubber band thing. I mean, they just keep revolutionizing our ability to be lethal. And, one of the things I like most about Rage, I think, is, every archer's not perfect. Any hunter that tells you he's perfect and has never made a bad shot or a marginal shot is not telling you the truth. I think we've all fallen victim to it. I did it just last year myself on a mule deer hunt. I actually missed that muley, the Majestic Lion. I missed him the first time. Sent the arrow down and it nicked a branch and sailed right over his back. And I was fortunate enough to get a second shot at him. And the second shot, I hit him, but it was a marginal shot. It was a little bit high. I had a good angle, so it ended up clipping the other lung on the way out the backside. But, in that instance, I'm a firm believer. And if I didn't have that Rage on the end of my arrow, I don't know that deer would be on the ground the way he is today. I mean, I think, the wound channel that you get from a Rage broadhead and that rapid expansion and everything just lends itself to, if you do make a marginal shot, it gives you the upper hand, in my opinion, if that makes sense. So I think, that's what we've been shooting for a long time, and I don't think I see myself switching anytime soon.
Very good. Excellent. Well, thank you for that, guys. Let's move on to a memorable deer hunt. And I asked each of you to think of a memorable deer hunt that you've been on recently. And Casey, I don't know if we're going to go down the Majestic Lion path or not, but it kind of feels like we should. I don't know.
Yeah. We can go down the lion path. We can elaborate on him a little bit.
All right. Very good. Let's hear the Majestic Lion hunt story.
Okay, so Majestic Lion. So first off, Alberta mule deer has been on my bucket list for a long time, and not necessarily even Alberta mule deer. I wanted, whether it was Eastern Colorado or Alberta, I wanted to do a spot and stalk mule deer hunt for just one of those epic, big bodied, big framed, gnarly mule deer. I mean, I just always had this vision of doing a spot and stalk for one of those deer. So I got fortunate enough last year to go up to Alberta and hunt with Alberta River Valley Lodge, Lee McNary up there. Great guy. It's a little family run outfit. They've got some fantastic ground. We went up there. Chris and I went up there actually with our partner with Rusted Rooster, Jason Brown, and then our dad. We took Chuck up there. The old man wanted to take him on a muley hunt, so we go up there, and we went up there for 10 days in September chasing muleys, and I got fortunate enough to get put on this deer we were looking for that they didn't really have a name for. They had a picture of him, but
Sure.
didn't have a name for him. And the first time we saw him, we named him the Majestic Lion. But to make a really long story short, I hunted him for 10 days the first time. And out of those 10 days, I saw him once. I saw him one day. In the morning, we made a stalk on him. We got to 68 yards. He was bedded up. He ends up standing up, walking the opposite direction, stops at about 104. 104 is a little too far for me. I'm not pulling an arrow at a deer that size at 104 yards, let alone any deer. So I was stuck standing there and basically watching him walk away. So he walked away and disappeared out of my sights, and we went, back to the ebbs and flows. We went from an extreme high to an extreme low all in about 2 hours. Later on that evening, we ended up finding him again. We glassed him up and found him. So I made another stalk, and as luck would have it, I got to 68 yards again, and he got up and went the opposite direction and never offered me a shot opportunity. So over the course of 10 days, I had that one day of 2 encounters with him, and that was it. I mean, other than that, I was pounding my head against the wall. We never saw him. Nothing. It was 1 out of 10 days. So at the end of the trip, Lee basically said to me, you're coming back. I want you to come back and see, we got an awesome story going with this guy. I want to see if we can get him on the ground. So I went back in October, and it was completely the opposite of September. I was planning on going back up for 7 days, and day number 1, literally at daybreak, just enough light to see through the spotting scope, and we found the deer.
Wow.
So we found him, and the stalk ensued. We crawled across a cut pea field, which I don't know if you guys have ever seen any cut pea fields in Alberta, but they look like the top of an end table. they're bare dirt with not a dang thing to hide behind. So
wow.
Somehow we made it work. We quarter wind them the whole way. We crawled probably half mile across the pea field. Took us a couple hours. I think we started the stalk right around 7 a.m. and somewhere in there. And by the time I actually got up to where I needed to be and loosed the first arrow, I sent the first arrow right around like 12:15 or something along those lines. So it was a long stalk and it was a drawn out deal. But when I sent that first arrow, the deer had stood up and he came across in front of me, and Lee was with me. And of course, my cameraman, Aaron, one of our field production guys who's with me everywhere I go. The deer was in front of us, and he stood up, and Lee stands up and grabs a range on him and gives me the range and says, "Okay, go." So I stand up to try to send an arrow, and when I do, I realize the deer's standing head on. He's facing me, directly. So I hit the deck again, thinking, oh gosh, here I am standing up tall in the middle of a pea field. Like, there's no way I can make that shot. And I look behind me, and Aaron is so locked in on the camera that he's still standing up in the middle of the wide open with the deer standing at 60 yards. So thankfully I grabbed his leg and yanked on him, and he hit the ground, and it was quite the ordeal. But the deer ends up walking across, and he comes across in front of us. He gets to about, I think it was like 56 yards or 58 yards. I don't remember exactly, but Lee gave me another range, and I remember telling myself, okay, let him clear the tree. Okay, he's clear. I stand up, draw back, send that first arrow, and I watch the arrow go about 6-8 inches right over his back. And when that happened, my mind just went to mush. I hit the ground, and I just thought, what in the world just happened? Like, I sent the arrow over that deer's back, and see, I never saw it hit the branch. So I thought, like, man, is he way closer than the rangefinder is telling me? Like, is there something wrong with the rangefinder?
Right.
So I at that point, I was just all screwed up. But, luckily enough, we stuck with it. I knocked another arrow. The deer didn't spook too bad, and we got another shot. And the second shot, Lee said, I'm in my mind going, well, do I trust the rangefinder or do I shoot him for what he looks like he is, Thankfully, I trusted the rangefinder. Lee bounced another range on him and said, I think he said 56 again, actually.
Yep.
And I stood up, and at that point I said, hey, trust it. So I sent the second arrow and was lucky enough to get it. It hit him high, but came out low on the backside and clipped one lung, and the rest is history. That deer ran and ran into a patch of bush, And I think I sat for 6 hours watching that patch of bush to see if he came out anywhere. And he didn't. So we went in without blood, and we knew he was in there somewhere. And I went in, with an arrow nocked and hoping to find him. And sure enough, we found him. And he is a 208-inch absolute behemoth of a mule deer. He's got 2 5.5 or 6 inch brow tines. So, I mean, he screams character all day long. So
wow.
That dream I had of a crazy muley, that was it. That one worked, and it happened, and it's one I'll never forget.
Could you, if you had to estimate, what's the hoof weight on that muley? I mean, those things are so big. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say,
giant.
I would say on the hoof, the line, he had to go 340 to 350. I mean, that thing was he was huge. And our dad killed a big deer. He killed a 175-inch muley when we were up there. And that was the first muley I'd ever walked up on. And, of course, the old man's like, all right, boys, well, I killed him. There he is. Drag him out. Nothing ever changes from the days of being in Western Pennsylvania. So Chris and I latched onto this thing to drag him out of the bush. And it was like, oh, my Lord, that's way bigger than a whitetail.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, they're shockingly big, man.
Yeah, they're deceptively big. It's crazy.
Yep.
So, Chris, your turn. Where are we going to go?
Well, I've had a few pretty unbelievable encounters. This year I had a great buck. I named him Baba Booey. He was.
You guys have the best names. It's crazy.
Yeah, old Baba Booey. He was a good one. He's coming up. I think he might even be on this evening tonight. But yeah, he was fun. But I think if I was to single out my most memorable one, there was a buck that I shot in Iowa. That was a double drop tine buck. We were hunting in our buddy's place. His name's Chad. He has an outfit down there called Midwest Antler Company, and I was hunting down there with him. And it was kind of an unbelievable series of events that happened in really in a 36-hour time frame. We got into Iowa. We literally got in the stand that night. Casey shot a 168-inch buck, called him in, amazing footage, running, came in, scraped in front of him, shoots this 168-inch buck, literally gets in the car and drives to Kansas. And I get up the next morning to get in the stand, and as he gets to Kansas, he gets in the stand and he shoots a 186-inch typical in Kansas the next day, right? So,
right.
I'm just not good at this. I mean, he really is crushing me right now, And it is an unbelievable, streak right there. In 2 days, in 2 different states, he's got 2 giants on the ground. And I hunted all morning, and I was coming back to camp, and we were driving past this one farm in Iowa. And if you've ever hunted out in Iowa, they've got the terraces, the corn terraces and things like that. And I just happened to catch a movement of antler way out on this corn terrace. And I stopped and glassed, and I look up, and here's this double drop tine, just a stud that was out laying down with it bedded up with a doe. And I was like, well, he's right there. I have no reason to move, period. That's a giant. Whether I just watch him and he goes in somewhere and I set up on his farm, but I'm just going to sit right here and watch him. So I watched that deer for 8 hours in a corner. There was one fence and there was 3 cedar trees. That's it. And the rest was all cornfields. And I just happened to make my way to that cedar tree in the corner, and I sat there. I watched him for 8 hours. And in the course of that 8 hours, about hour 7, I decided to go back to the truck. My cameraman at the time was watching the deer. I went back to the truck. I grabbed 2 tree stands, walked back, climbed the cedar tree with the branches. Those cedars will have those stupid branches all over the place.
Sure,
low enough. I jumped up, pulled myself up, and literally climbed up through the cedar and put one in for him, all quiet enough. I mean, just literally cutting, the saw was moving at a 1 inch per hour as I was cutting one branch. We got the tree stand in, and I yelled down to him, and he hooked everything, dropped the rope. We get in a tree. So now we're actually in a tree that did not have a tree stand in it less than an hour ago. It's the only cedar tree in that corner, and we're just watching him now. I figured, well, he can't go anywhere else except down here. So we're just kind of waiting, and sure enough, the deer stood up on the 9th hour of the day. Wow. He stood up, and he started to come down, and I smacked the antlers together as hard as I possibly could. He was going to go the other direction out through another giant field. And I said, this is my last shot. So I just banged the antlers as hard as I possibly could. It caught his attention. He turned, he swings, he looks at me, and he commits. And he starts coming down, and he had kind of a little hobble on his one leg. He dropped down through and went into a valley. And he came up, and when he came up, he was just there and looking. And I can just remember the big neck, seeing a double drop time, being the way he was, and a drop time off the other side. I'm going like, oh my goodness gracious, this is one of the biggest deer I've ever seen on the hoof, and I'm ready to do this at this point. And so anyway, long story, he jumped the fence, and he comes walking right by, and there wasn't anything. He just walked right by at 43 yards. I made the shot on him, and after 9 hours, I just had one of those, conniption fits. Thank God my safety system was on, because I went up to the tree. I just couldn't believe that it happened. And it actually was that was the first, not only was it was the first deer that I shot that was Boone Crockett. He's 175 inches. So that was super special to me that he was the first one that I had killed over 170. But he also was the first buck that I ever had the pleasure of being. He was on the cover of Monster Buck,
yep,
the Realtree Monster Buck DVD, and that hunt was on Realtree. And so growing up as a kid, that's all I watched was Realtree Monster Buck. And so for me to shoot that deer and to see him on the cover of Monster Buck that next season was just that was kind of like a career high for me.
Right.
Just because I had so much respect for Realtree and for what they've done, and all of those Monster Buck videos was just amazing. And so I got to see myself on there, and then I got to see Casey also on there with his 186 and his 168 that he had killed the 2 nights prior to me shooting mine. So in a short period of time, we had a lot of antler on the ground, and we were having an unbelievable season. And it just kind of all came down, and he had a drop time. And so it's really the only buck to this date that I've killed that had a drop time. So just so many firsts and so many unique things had to happen in order to shoot that buck. But you want to talk about patience. There's nothing worse than just standing there for 9 hours. I mean, I was starving. I was like, man, can we go get some tasty pizza or something? Like, anybody go get some anything? And we just were like, all right, well, we're here. We're not leaving. We'll eat later. We'll just hang out, see what happens. And sure enough, man, he walked right by that one tree, and we were able to take him. So it was a pretty amazing hunt.
Wow. The Baba Booey buck. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Guys, there's a couple of amazing stories and a couple of amazing deer. And what an amazing period of time you were in. And 2 days and 3 monster bucks on the ground.
Yeah, that was an unbelievable season for us. I mean, that was one of our best, I think, looking back. So we've killed some fantastic deer since, but never that much in that short period of time. That was like Halloween Day to November 2nd. It was like that. Right. That was just like we were done. And then we were done, and then we were like, oh, now we got to go find another day, because now we were like, what do we do?
Right.
So it was incredible. We've never had that happen before.
Isn't that Halloween week such an amazing week of the year?
Oh yeah.
That's my
Casey ever anywhere else ever in life. You'll never find it except in a tree.
Right.
Right. Halloween is my day. That is my favorite day to be in a tree stand. It's just, there's something about it, the way everything looks with the colors changing and the cool breeze and the cool mornings and those antlers echo through the woods. I mean, it's just, there's something about Halloween Day to me that's just my favorite day.
And the deer always seem to move right around that week in a way that they haven't moved all year. It's just, it's a phenomenal, enlightening week for I think most deer hunters across the country.
Yep, that's when that switch gets flipped. In my opinion, that's usually when it is. So.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yep.
Very good. Well, let's. That's the memorable deer hunts. I've got 10 rapid fire questions for you guys, and I'll bounce them back and forth. Casey, let's start with you. Casey, what's your number one hunting tip of all time?
Play the wind.
All right, Chris?
Patience. Have patience.
Patience. All right. We all have these items that we like to carry with us. Maybe they're good luck charms. Maybe they're actually useful tools of some sort. Other than your weapon, what's that one thing that you have to have with you and it drives you crazy if you leave it in the truck or at home? Chris, let's start with you.
I might say for both of us, but it's my neck gaiter.
Your neck gaiter. Oh, a good one. Very nice.
My neck gaiter drives me nuts if I don't have on a neck gaiter.
That's a good one. Yeah, I like those. Excellent.
I second the same thing, neck gaiter. I think if I wear a neck gaiter, I can shed at least 2 layers of clothing. I can stay that much warmer, so I'm the same.
Right. Good point. Very good point. All right, Casey, what's your biggest pet peeve in life?
Oh, my biggest pet peeve in life. Boy, I have lots of them.
All right.
Geez, that's such a loaded question. Petty arguments, I think, are my biggest pet peeve in life. I think, when people worry about things that really they have no control over and they get into arguments over them, I think that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves.
Gotcha. All right, Chris?
Mine's just unhappy people. I'm just not a big fan of unhappy people. There's so many things to be happy about in this world, and there's so many things to live for. Trust me, I've been down the road of death. It's not the right way to go.
Gotcha.
I think unhappy people, be happy, regardless of your situation. Just be happy. Things will change.
Right. All right. And I'll take your word on that, Chris. You've been there. You can speak loudly.
Yeah.
On that.
Just be happy, and good things will happen.
Right. Gotcha. All right, Chris. How old are you today?
I am 37.
37. All right. Knowing what you know today, what would you tell the 16-year-old Chris Keefer?
I would tell him that he doesn't have to earn it all in 24 hours. I think my younger self was aggressive. Now, don't get me wrong, and Casey will probably back this up. I'm still slightly aggressive today.
Okay.
But I think I've calmed down way better than I was. So I'd have to tell my younger self to just slow down. The bridge isn't built one day. So.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. Casey.
So I am 34, and I think that I would tell myself to listen. Don't just hear things, but listen to them. I think there's a big difference in that. I think when I was growing up, a lot of things that, my parents would tell me or whoever would tell me to try to help me steer, be steered in the right direction. I'd hear them, but I wouldn't really listen to them. I think there's a difference in that. And I think now I do a much better job of listening and taking out of things what should be taken from them as opposed to just hearing it.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. All right, Casey, you are at a hunting convention somewhere in the world, and a stranger comes up to you and asks, and you have a conversation, and they ask what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
I try to show people my version of be alive. I think that's what I do for a living. I go out there and Chris and I are fortunate enough to hunt on television, which is awesome. But I think for us, it's always been more about sharing a story. And I kind of, touched on that maybe a little bit earlier. I think to us, the story is always the most important thing. I think we're out there to show hunting and fishing and the outdoor lifestyle for more than just a kill shot. We want people to know what it's all about aside from that. We want people to experience it firsthand with us, whether we're successful in the end or not. If people measure success with inches of antler, then we're not going to be successful every time. But that's not how we measure success. And really what I'm trying to do is show people my version of be alive. I can't tell other people how to be alive in their own life, but I can show you my version through Rival Wild and Dropped, and that's what I do.
Nice. All right. Chris, what would you say?
For me, Casey and I did not get into this to be famous. That's not like we don't consider ourselves, we're these famous people, hunters, whatever. We always joke and say, we're not walking red carpets collecting Oscars. And so from my standpoint, when people come up to me, a lot of the times, they obviously, they know from the show, they recognize us from the show, and that's great. We have that platform. We do. But a lot of the times I'll hear them right into what we do, and our job and we're fortunate enough to go in the fall and hunt, and do all that. But, we also run, some businesses and with our production house and with our marketing company. And so a lot of times, even around here local, if someone doesn't know me from the show and they say, what do you do? I tell them that, hey, we have a production company and marketing. And I don't go directly to, hey, I'm a television guy. I think that's just something that it's a wonderful platform that we have, and we love it. And we just want to be those guys that people can relate to.
Very cool.
And so I just talk business.
Nice. Very nice. All right, Chris, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had, you're going to laugh at this. And yes, I did have this many. I had 5 eggs this morning.
5 eggs. All right.
Yeah.
I can't leave that one unturned. Explain.
Well, I do a lot of weight training and stuff in the morning. I get up early and go and do the gym thing every morning and different types of training. And my cameraman Lee is a CrossFitter. He's got me into it here as of recently, and it's been kind of fun. Minus the whole, him kicking my rear end every now and then.
Yep.
But it's just one of those things for me. Breakfast is like my meal. I just love breakfast. So I eat like 5 eggs and bacon and yogurt, and I just crush up anything I can do. And I just love eggs. I just hammer them down. My wife is just annoyed because I'll go through a dozen eggs in like a day. She's like, "What are you doing?" So I'll eat eggs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I just love it.
All right, very good. All right, Casey, what'd you have for breakfast?
Copenhagen. Am I allowed to say it?
Yeah, that's not a 4-letter word on this show. That's excellent. No kidding. I'm looking at a Copenhagen tin on my desk right now, as a matter of fact.
There you go. Usually I'm the same. We eat a lot of eggs here in the house. We actually have, we've got 11 chickens. We've got 10 hens and a rooster that we have here at the house. So we eat a lot of eggs, but usually my day starts with Copenhagen.
All right. Very nice. Excellent. All right. Casey, you get a blank canvas. You get a billboard on the side of a highway. You can put anything you want on it. What would it say?
Be alive.
Be alive. All right.
Chris? Yep, be alive. That's our motto. I'm probably speaking for both of us on that one, but I think that's one thing that two Irish hockey players like Chris and I that don't agree often can probably agree on.
All right, Chris, you agree?
There's no thing. There's no doubt that mine would say be alive, and I think if I was catering to the hunting audience, I would say live to hunt and hunt to live. But I think be alive is our number one, and that's exactly what I'd say.
Gotcha. Very cool. Excellent. All right. Let's see. Chris, if I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
Oh, boy. My gosh, I just had like 15 people pop in. That's crazy.
Wow.
I think it's, success isn't always measured with dollars. And for me, it goes back to the business and some of the people that I've seen that have grown brands. And I respect them. I think that the Drury brothers, Mark and Terry Drury, to me, are super successful, and they are some of the guys that I look up to in this industry as far as being able to stay relevant and grow a brand and really run a business in the right way and make sponsors happy. And so when it comes to the hunting world, I'd say that the Drury brothers are probably one that I would that would pop in right away.
All right, very good. Casey, how about you?
So I'm going to go a little off the wall on this one with you guys, but I'm going to pick a group of people, and I'm going to say the founding fathers.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm
nice.
I'm kind of a history buff, right? So I enjoy the Revolutionary War time period. And when I think of success, I look at what that team of men was up against back in the day, and somehow against all odds, both within the borders of this country and across the ocean, they were able to come together for a common cause, and everybody kind of set their individual differences aside in order for the greater good. And when I look at success, I think that's the ultimate success. Success only comes from sacrifice, and when you can sit there and everybody can sacrifice their own desires for the greater good, I think that's the very definition of success. And I think we could use some of that today, to be honest.
Casey, that might be the best answer we've ever had to that question on this show. That's fantastic.
Oh, good. I was hoping I wasn't going to throw you off with that, but yeah, that's what it is.
Of course, the founding fathers are the Patriots, of course.
Yeah,
those guys were successful. Darn it.
Yeah,
right.
They're the reason we're sitting here.
That's
doing
right.
What we're doing.
That's right. Exactly.
And they had it right from the beginning.
They really did.
They surely did.
Crazy. All right. Number 9. Here we go. Let's start with Casey. Casey, what's a typical day in your life look like?
Typical day. So I wake up with my 2-year-old's left foot in my face and my 7-year-old's right fist in my face.
Right.
That's generally how that goes. Wake up to the kids in the morning, and my wife, usually we get up and wheel around the house a little bit, get breakfast, and kind of do our thing in the kitchen, and have little random discussions about the day and what's going on. And from there, pack my stuff up and head into the office. And basically, it's office work from the time I get in there till the time I leave. So we go through in a day everything from upcoming production shoots for our shows to other productions we're producing for manufacturers, to commercial shoots, to short films, and then move on to the marketing side of things. Who are we branding and what are we branding, and catalogs and print ads we're designing, and working with the team in the studio. We've got 30 people in the studio now, so our day. Yeah, so our days are pretty full with, the ins and outs of the hunting world and what we're doing with all that stuff. And it's a lot of fun. We get to live, eat, sleep, and breathe that stuff every day. So, that's kind of a typical day in the office, and shifting gears and making sure sponsors have what they need from us and vice versa. And so it's a pretty wild and crazy day when we get in the office. And then from there, it's generally back here to the house, time to unwind and relax and spend time with, my wife and kids, and whether that's out fishing in the pond in the front yard or, messing around with the chickens in the backyard, or, who knows what we're doing. Maybe we're coaching baseball, playing baseball, or over at the ice rink skating. It's always something, doing a little bit of hockey in the driveway with Ryder, my 7-year-old. There's always something that we try to do, as a family with the kids in the evening. And then we get them to bed. And if all things are in good shape, hopefully I've got an episode of Game of Thrones on the DVR that I can sit down and catch before calling her a night. So
Good point.
yeah, that's pretty much the day. A day in the life.
Very cool. And Chris, what's your day look like usually?
Yeah, my day is it's similar in the middle. I get up every morning about 6 a.m. And I'm an early guy. I like super early stuff. I'm kind of like I gotta go, but I also go to bed early too. So for me, it's about 6 a.m. Alarm goes off. I'm usually at the gym by about 7 a.m. And I'll work out for about an hour and a half, depending on what kind of workout it is for the day. If I'm weight training, if I'm doing cardio, if I'm doing CrossFit, or whatever. But I do that about 6 days a week, and then I have one off day. And then usually it's home, take a shower, say hello to the family. At that point, my daughter's usually up. She's 10, Kylie. And so, yeah, it's usually just kind of breakfast and same thing, kind of what's the run for the day? Where do I got to be and what time? And my wife tells me, here's the schedule. And I say, okay, and off to work. This time of year, like Casey said, I mean, we're just in production mode. And so, we like you mentioned earlier, we got 30 people in the studio. We got a massive team that's doing a lot of different stuff. And so for Casey and I to get in there, and we each kind of have our respective things that we deal with in the studio, along with Jason and Mark, our two partners. And we're just all over the place in the studio. And we look down and it's 5 o'clock and it's like, okay, what do we do next? And I'll try to squeeze a round of 18 holes in, because golf is kind of a passion of mine this time of year. And I've been lucky enough now that my daughter has started golf and loves it. And so now when she says, hey, can we do 9 holes, that it just puts a giant smile on my face. And so I say, yep, let's do it. So, may end up hitting 9 holes with my daughter and then meet my wife for dinner. And by that time, I'm exhausted because I started at 6 a.m. And so it's kind of like get home and throw on Netflix. What can I catch up on? How far Game of Thrones, what's happening? And by then, usually halfway through, I'm out cold. And so my day usually ends with me waking up on the couch at some point, turning off the TV and walking like a zombie across into the bed and start it all over again. So.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. And last question. Well, Chris, we'll start with you. What's a deer hunting day in your life look like?
Ooh, a deer hunting day in my life. So about 4 a.m. alarm goes off. Let's take Kansas, for example. We're sitting hunt camp. I hit the remote for the generator. She fires up. I got a Keurig plugged in. Lots of coffee.
Yep.
The outside shower always will wake you up, just because you have to make that walk from the tent to the shower. And so, yeah, so you're up now. I've got a cup of coffee in me, and then everybody starts getting up and around, and we make a game plan. What's the weather? What's the wind? What's happening? What's going on? And head to the tree stand. I'm usually about a 10:30, 11 o'clock guy is when I'll put the kid in, come back, cook breakfast, find something to do in the middle of the day, whether it's checking trail cameras, running stands, changing something. It's never, you always want a nap, and it's always good intention, but it never happens. And then it's basically turn and burn and back into the stand, and hopefully arrow a big buck and let the celebration around the fire begin.
Very cool. All right. And Casey, what's a typical deer hunting day in your life look like?
Oh, get up around 8 in the morning while Chris is pounding his head against the wall on morning hunts. Let him do that. Get in the stand in the evening.
That's exactly right, dude.
Get in the stand in the evening when I know there's a big deer coming through somewhere. Kill him, move to the next state, kill another big one there.
Yeah, he pretty much has it down pat, doesn't he?
That's great.
It's all in good fun, but in all honesty, Midwest hunts for me, and everything's relative, right? So the size of deer you kill everywhere are relative. I mean, they got to exist in the area to kill them, when they're big. But the same with hunting styles. So for me in the Midwest, I'm not a big fan of morning hunts, to be honest. I think a lot of the places that we hunt don't lend themselves to morning hunts. I think you can actually do more harm than good by trying to get in there and blowing deer out in the morning. So a lot of times I will wait until daylight. If I'm not hunting in the morning, I'll wait until daylight. I'll jump in the truck and, drive some of the roads, or jump in the Ranger and drive some of the, farm roads and perimeter roads around our properties, or in certain areas where I know there is deer movement. And again, back to my patience thing, I'll sit there and glass with a spotting scope or the binos and just kind of take a beat on what's going on from a distance. And I like to sit back like that. So, when I feel it's right, if I think I can get in there in the morning and make a move, then I will. If not, then I just hang back.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. Excellent, guys. This has been absolutely phenomenal time spent with you guys. I've learned a lot about you and how you go about your lives and where you've been in your lives. Where can we find more information about you online, social media, that kind of stuff? When's your show on? We know it's on the Outdoor Channel, but when can we expect to see it? Let's run down all that stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we got our website, Keefer Brothers, or KeeferBros.com is our website. You can go there and kind of learn all things. We've got some cool videos on there, and every now and then Casey and I do a thing called the couch session, where we sit down and take a whole bunch of questions from fans, and then we sit down and kind of give our in-depth look at it, and put those videos up there. And we do a lot of articles and gear reviews on there as well. So there's a lot of cool stuff on the website. And then from the social media side, we're super active on Facebook Live. We try to go live from field quite a bit, and when we're on shoots and all that stuff. So our Facebook page is just Keefer Brothers Facebook. And then Instagram. We love Instagram. It's a visual way to tell people what we're doing. And of course, we love being visual. So our Instagram page is at the Keefer Brothers as well. And of course, we have our personal accounts that are very active. So myself, Instagram, Casey as well. I think we just try to stay active as much as we can in the world of social and digital today. You kind of got to be up on it. We've got all the accounts out there, and we're as active as we can be on all of them. So we love interacting with people and having send us questions or just talks or whatever. And so anything they've got, you can certainly reach out to us. And our email addresses and everything are on there. And we love chatting with people, so not a problem.
Good, gotcha. And what's showtime typically?
So Rival Wild airs over on Sportsman Channel, and show times, I believe Wednesdays at 9 is our anchor slot, right, Chris? Wednesdays at
8:30 this year. So we actually just did Wednesday at 8:30 as Rival Wild on Sportsman, and it re-airs three times a week throughout the week.
Yep, and then Dropped actually will be coming up Q4 over on Outdoor Channel, and Monday nights at 9 p.m., and then they're actually re-airing it Mondays at midnight, Saturdays at 1 a.m., and then Saturday nights at 10 p.m. as well. But at Monday at 9 p.m. is the first airing of the week.
Very cool. Excellent. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and finally got to put this together. It's been a couple of years in the making, but I know you guys are busy and usually out in the middle of nowhere where we can't find you.
Just can't get a hold of us, but we certainly appreciate the invite and would love to come back anytime you guys want to chat. Know that we'll try to make ourselves available.
Well, thank you to Chris and Casey Keefer for joining us on the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. They're certainly some of the most creative minds in the industry, and we thoroughly enjoy hanging out with them. And every time we've bumped into them, which is not very frequent, but I feel like I can just hang out with them for a very long time. And just a couple of guys hanging out, having a good time talking about deer hunting, and share a lot of great stories, and certainly enjoy everything they have going on. And best of luck to them in their marketing and the production company and all the other projects that they have ongoing, and certainly best of luck to them this deer hunting season. Can't wait to see what some of their footage looks like next year. Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week?
Yeah, we do, and
the Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
Something that's kind of near and dear to my heart that I try to do every year, and that's set up a youth hunt with a new and up-and-coming hunter that's maybe never killed their first whitetail deer. Set that up early in the season and, get that youth hunt set up. And to me, it's more important than my whole season is to have that opening morning, a youth deer gun season lined out with somebody that's either never been to the woods or hasn't had the opportunity to kill an animal to put meat in the freezer with. And that's something that I focus on every year, and I try to do every year is take a youth hunter to the woods. And I set that up now, and then I'm set for when that day comes that I know that I'm going to stop my hunt for the year and focus on trying to get that young man or woman their first whitetail deer. It just holds a special place in my heart. Take a youth hunter out and try to kill their first deer.
That's something I look forward to every single year now as well. There was a time when I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about just getting my own deer. But these days, it's pretty much all I think about. I try to get them out first, like you do, and then maybe I'll get lucky down the road.
Yeah, just that it really does hold a special place in your heart once you do it once. If you haven't done it, take it in consideration and put the youth before you and focus on taking them. I try to take them to my best spot, and if they kill that giant, that's just an icing on the cake for me. Because man, it would just throw me to death to have a youth hunter kill a monster whitetail deer. Their first deer can be a butt buck, and in their eyes, it's a monster. Really, it's a real cool experience, and it's something that I can't tell you to go do it or force you to go do it. But once you've done it, it'll hold a special place in your life every year.
Right. Very much so. Very, very much so. Well, that's great, man. Thanks for that tip of the week. That was fantastic. Thank you to Morse's Sporting Goods for sponsoring the Chubby Tines Tip of the Week. I'd also like to say thank you to all of our sponsors. Without them, this show is not possible. And specifically, I'd like to say thank you to Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, Covert Scouting Cameras, the Horny Buck Seed Company, and once again, Morse's Sporting Goods. I truly believe in each and every product that we're advertising on this show. We've tried them all. We've been to the stores. Each and every one are absolutely high quality, high grade products. And if you're shopping for any one of these types of items, please give our sponsors a shot first. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and Blueberry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.